everyone, Ant Ravenwood here. Haven't done a video for a while, but in my last video, which I think was called Crane Bag or something, when I was talking about what sort of stuff I take to my grove when I'm doing my Wildwood mysticism, I started the video off wearing a bit of a weird sort of costume with a hat and a blazer. You've probably seen it. And I started explaining why that particular costume came about, and it was because I suddenly find myself taking a bit of a stab at Bardic tradition, and I'd always been into amateur dramatics and music, songwriting, singing, that kind of thing. And so when I started studying with OBOD, Ovates, Bards and Druids, I started off obviously with a Bardic grade, and a lot of that kind of made sense to me, and a lot of it is obviously story based but has kind of like meanings and messages entwined within the stories. And I thought, this is good. And I've always been into story writing, storytelling. I was always great at English language and literature at school, loved it, amateur dramatics, delivering a message to the people and all that kind of thing. This, however, is different because I'm not used to talking to camera. I'm normally used to talking to people. But having said that, you know, this is the modern day, and in a way it's kind of nice because you're a bit freer, you can be yourself. Excuse me while my dog walks in the room. She's come to see what I'm doing, talking to a little box on the top of a tripod. I think she's happy. So anyway, I touched on the reason why I was doing this with my costume, my hat and everything, and I'd written, I'd said that I'd written a children's book, a fantasy story for kids. So I thought I'd take the opportunity to kind of dig into that a little bit further and let you know exactly what it is. She's on my leg. Come on, down. Down. Good girl. Sorry. Anyway, my story came about. I was on a family holiday, and we're going right back to 1987. Okay? Dark Ages, 1987. And we were on one of our many family holidays, and we'd been to North Wales before, and it was a relatively new thing for our family to go to North Wales. And as a kid at school, it was so inspirational, this beautiful countryside with these rolling hills and mountains and valleys and waterfalls, and it was fantastic. You know, we'd never seen, as kids, we'd never really seen that, you know, so it was great for me and my brother to sort of run around down all these chines and up these hills and all that kind of stuff, rock climbing and everything else. It was great fun. And we developed an interest to go around old ruins and old sites and sacred things. We went round all the castles in North Wales. There's quite a lot. And the other thing we discovered were watermills. And at the time there was a little watermill up near Llandudno, called Fellin Isaf, excuse my Welsh, and a little watermill called Fellin Isaf, and it had been passed down through the family, and that particular incarnation had opened the mill to the public. And it was a very quiet day when we visited. The car park was empty. There were signs everywhere saying welcome, come on in, da 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 da. And we got there and we thought, well, where is everybody? It was bit eerie. It was a tiny little village mill. It wasn't a big watermill at all, a little tiny thing. And so we got there and we pulled up, and we looked around, and we went over to the mill. The door was open, and we walked inside, and all of a sudden this voice came out of nowhere. And basically it was a trigger system. So if you walked through the door, you started an audio off, like a trail through the mill. So you just heard this voice, and because we were the only people there, it was really eerie, and it was a bit like, oh, I'm not sure about this. And it said, you know, if you go through the room, and then you go through this room, and you can go up this stairs, and you can see the miller doing this. And they'd set it out all really quite quaint, and it was all very museum-y, They had waxwork figures looking like millers and things, but it was just all so weird, and this voice kept coming, and this little eerie kind of Welsh folky harp music, and it was very strange. And of course, as a kid into story writing and acting and imagination was just going, whoa, I thought this is so cool. So I came back home after the holiday with this still very much in my head, and I started scribbling down ideas of a time gone by, like Victorian times, and in this haunted watermill. And I gave it a title of The Breathing Wheel. So the water wheel, as in the wheel, and the fact that it was breathing was the fact that I decided that a curse had come upon the mill, and things started happening on their own. Like the water wheel would suddenly start turning for no reason, and then it'd stop, and then it'd whiz round at 100 miles an hour, and then it'd stop. And there were all sorts of weird and wonderful goings on happening inside this mill. So that's where the idea came from. And I scribbled down a very horrible little notebook thing, scribbled loads and loads of ideas. And this was when I came back from the holiday, and I've still got this book. Very, very different version of my story. Only a handful of the characters that are in the finished publication are in here. Some of the characters that are in here aren't in the book, and vice versa. So that's where it all started. That was The Breathing Wheel, 1987. The idea was to scribble out a loose idea of a story in a notebook, and because I was churning out demos at the time of my own music, my own compositions, I was into alternative pop, if you like, and I was very influenced by people like Adam Ant and Brian Ferry and Peter Gabriel, people that were a bit more creative with their music, and that kind of rubbed off on my songwriting, and I came up with a cassette. You remember cassettes? Looks something like that. Yeah, cassette. Yeah, you put it in a player and you clunk the play button down, and yeah, some of you will remember, some of you won't. Anyway, the original batch of music for The Breathing Wheel, it's not shutting, ended up on a cassette, and there's a photo of the actual water wheel of the mill that I went to in Wales. So that's where the story started, and I thought it was a good idea for the cover. So that was my first effort of music for this, what was going to be a cassette full of music to link together a story, like a concept album thing, right? Anyway, years passed, and the music was, some of it was written, and I thought, and then new ideas, new influences came, and it's kind of like I went off that way. You know, I went into performing with bands. I was on stage every week, you know, singing Rolling Stones and whatever, and music, my own creative music was changing, and so The Breathing Wheel got left on a shelf, basically. But I loved the story, I loved the original notebook story that I had, and I thought, I started penciling down different ideas and ways to expand it. Jump to 2013, and I come up with my self-published story for kids, children's fantasy, The Breathing Wheel by Anthony Ravenwood. Wonderfully and magically produced by a self-publishing company called Magic Oxygen Publishing. If you're into self-publishing, whether you're a storyteller, a poet, a serious writer, or whatever, if you've not heard of Magic Oxygen Publishing, then you have to check them out. They are wonderful, wonderful people, very eco-conscious people as well. Do everything environmentally friendly as far as they possibly can. Beautiful people. Husband and wife team, primarily. Simon is the publisher, and his beautiful wife Tracy is also does a lot of stuff for the publishing house, including things like editing, which I was really in need of initially. And because I said, I've written a story, but I'm not an author. This is just a story that I've had in my head for over 25 years. I want to get it down on print. I want it to be a little landmark for myself, a little tick in the box. Yay, I've written a book. But I need help. And one of the biggest obstacles to overcome was the actual illustrations. Now that is a wonderful illustration. I'm not going to go in too much detail as to what it is or why it is. It's obviously that's a water mill in the middle, and this is a water wheel, the brown bit, and then this beautiful red creature who wasn't in the original version of the story when I first started drafting it, turns out to be pretty much the star of the show. He's a hero, and he's a griffin, and he looks something like that. Yeah. So he is a very rare griffin in the fact that he has a fiery red plumage, and he explains in the story that he is one of the last surviving red griffins, great red griffins that people had only really kind of like heard about. They didn't realise that they actually existed. And he earned the name Crimson, obviously because of his colour. Crimson becomes a bit of a hero in the story. When I was going out into libraries and other places doing this storytelling for the children, they loved Crimson. I would put the mask on. I had a red cloak. I'd put the mask on, and I would put a voice on like this as well, and I would be a wise old griffin. So the kids loved it. Yeah. So Crimson becomes a bit of a star of the show. Anyway. So 140 pages, something like that. Let yourself fall into the breathing wheel. A sinister, magical tale set in a deeply Welsh valley. Behind a thin veil lies the dark world of creatures and curses, havoc and madness. With time ticking and the pressure on, only a miracle would restore peace and return the stolen souls. Will there be enough fuel for the quest? Okay, so that's kind of like a little tag on the back of the book that gets you into the what's going to go on here sort of thing. Yeah. So beautiful, beautiful illustrations. I was saying before by the lovely, lovely. Talented artist called Steve Bayliss, independent artist, absolutely fantastic guy at coming up with just the kind of atmosphere and the way that the characters were drawn, just what I wanted. Yeah. For example, the two main characters here, Jacob and Martha, standing outside the mill in the book there, just pencil drawings, but just beautiful and enough to give you an impression, but then to kind of like set your mind going, oh, what's this valley look like, and what are those characters, what are their lives like, and all the rest of it. So that was the kind of feeling I was going to get, trying to get the reader to look at it, but give them an idea, but then for them to work it out and get their imagination going in their own way and create their own world around the characters. So this little beauty here retails, if you buy it online through Amazon, Waterstones, Magic Oxygen's own website, it retails at $6.99. Okay, I have a few hard copies left myself, and I'm doing a special Christmas offer on these, and I can, obviously being here, I can sign them for you as well. So I can have them especially signed. I can post them out myself for a very tempting offer of £5 a copy, right? £5 a copy. And what I'm doing is my very talented singer-songwriter partner who I've been writing and recording music with for over 25 years, Andy. I collared him and I said, look, the book has been finished. It's turned into a fantastic tale with all sorts of weird and wonderful things going on. I've left my old music on the shelf for like 10, 15 years. And wouldn't it be great to bring it up to date, to accompany the book, and to have an album of music that takes you through the story. Okay? So, this is our CD, same cover as the book. Alright? We are known as 2OAK, which is for a short for Two of a Kind, which is the musical partnership group that we call ourselves. So, Two of a Kind, myself and my friend Andy Johnson. The Breathing Wheel on CD, all the track listing information there, myself and Andy, illustrated by the same guy who did the illustrations in the book. Okay, this is me and Andy. Yeah, on the back is another illustration from Steve and the track listing there. Something like 16 tracks on this album, right? Takes you through the story. All kinds of music on there, folky, quite hard-hitting rock, very dark and spooky, atmospheric, jolly sing-along stuff. It's all in there, all right? The Breathing Wheel 16-track album and the Breathing Wheel 140-page paperback. I'm doing a deal this Christmas. It's holding it the right way around. £5 each. That's 10 quid. All right, 10 quid. You can have both of those sent to you in the post, signed. All right. It's a great little story for kids. I was told when my editor got hold of it that under 7 years, if your child is particularly literate and bright, they could probably handle it if they were read to. But for the ages of 7 upwards, they can read this book quite happily. I've sold this book to adults and friends and family, and they've thought it was just as great and just as interesting and exciting. So anybody can read it, really. That was my little plug for this video. I'm going to go now and do something a bit different in a minute, but drop me a comment down below. There's also a website for the Breathing Wheel, breathingwheel.co.uk, nice and easy. I'm on Facebook, Breathing Wheel, or The Breathing Wheel on Facebook. Alright, so you can find out a bit more about the story and the characters on those 2 pages. But drop me a line if you're interested. Also on Facebook we are known as 2OAK. If you come across that and scroll down onto our songs, you can hear some of the songs from the album, and I think there's also a couple of links on the website for the songs as well. So drop me a line if you're interested. It's great for kids, great to listen to as well. Some people have said if you're into prog rock, big influences of prog rock on there as well for us adults. All right, something for everybody. So drop us a comment and I'd love to hear from you, and I'll see you very, very soon. Blessings.